That's good. That's good. All right, Dan, I think we are live. How you doing tonight, man?
You.
Good, I'm good. So I guess where I want to start this off is that I noticed that you're an author, you have your own podcast, you're a speaker, you're a consultant, you're actually I think traveling right now in your RV or was traveling and how did all this come about, man?
We're yeah, I mean it's an interesting story. I mean, we started traveling full time in our RV going on 2 years. It was August of 2020 when we sold our house and all of our stuff. And we've absolutely been loving it. I mean, it's one of the best decisions we ever made. It wasn't an easy decision by any stretch of the imagination. I'd run a youth nonprofit organization for 30 years and absolutely loved the work I was doing, working with kids and helping them become better human beings. And it was, again, it wasn't a very easy decision, but it was also a way to kind of close a chapter on our lives and open a new one. And, I've been able to connect with some of my old players since we've been traveling. And that's been incredible because it's really kind of shown the fruits of my labor, so to speak, for those 30 years. And, the RV community is one of the most incredible communities we've ever been a part of. And we were heavily involved in our community back in Pennsylvania. But the RV community, if you haven't experienced it, it's, difficult to really understand what an incredible community it is. Not actually in the RV right now. We're in a little pause and giving the RV a little bit of a renovation right now. So we're at our niece and nephew's house in Pennsylvania, and the RV is out in the driveway with just yanked the dinette out of it and putting a new countertop in there and yanking some bunks out of it and just making it, when you're in it full time and you've been in it for a couple of years, you kind of know what you want and what you don't want. So,
Sure.
But we're loving it. We're loving every minute of it. It's an incredible lifestyle.
So if you don't mind me asking, I mean, what was the decision? I mean, was it just a new lifestyle, just something new you wanted to try, or what was the big decision on why to start this process?
So it was, I took 2 solo trips back in early 2019. One I drove by myself from Pennsylvania down to Dallas and then into Louisiana and back to Pennsylvania on the way back. About a month and a half after that, I did the same thing. Drove down to Orlando, Florida and back. And when I was about 16 years old, my mom had decided to, I was living in Pennsylvania with my dad. They were divorced, and she decided she was going to leave her job. And she took an old 1967 Plymouth Valiant, took the back seat out of it, put a, mattress, sheet of plywood and a mattress in the back seat, so her feet would be in the trunk when she slept, her head would be behind the front seats. And she just traveled all over the country. She'd volunteer and she'd just, visit friends and family and surprise people. And, I always admired her for what she did because it's incredibly brave to do that as a single woman in the mid 80s. Yeah. But by the same token, I love telling people about what she did, but it was always her story. I never thought it would be my story. But when I took those 2 trips in 2019, it just hit me. It was one of the first times I ever traveled where I wasn't on a very regimented schedule. So I left a little early to go to Dallas. I was going down there to the ABCA convention, the American Baseball Coaches Alliance convention. But I left a couple days early, took my time getting down there, stopped in Memphis, saw a couple friends while we were in Dallas, went to visit some friends in Louisiana. And it just hit me like, wow, man, this is really why mom did this. Just there's an incredible serenity on that drive. And then, the same thing when I went to Orlando, I stopped and saw one of my old players in Atlanta. We hung out for, a couple days and, continued on that. And on the way back again, I didn't go straight up 95. I took some secondary roads and really enjoyed it. And then when I got back, I had written like I hadn't written in many years. So there's almost like a new inspiration to sit down and write. At that point, I already had a book published that was out in 2012, and I was actually in the process of adding chapters to that book to republish it. But it was a long process because I was working a lot of hours and doing a lot of things. And when I got home from those trips, I wrote probably 4 or 5 chapters in what seemed like no time. So that was kind of like the aha moment of, you know what, I've done my work here. Maybe I can reach new people, by traveling and writing more and documenting our travels a little bit. Because that was one of the things I wanted to do, was kind of document our travels through blogging. And, my most recent book, The Journey of My Mother's Son, is really, a lot of talking about the process that led up to us embarking on this journey, as well as, the first 18 months of us being out on it. And it was one of the things that I often thought that, had social media been around in the 80s when my mom had done this, that it would have been pretty cool for her to be able to,
Sure.
Document some of those, travels that she had. I mean, after she passed away in 2005, we were, able to kind of look through some of her old travel journals and stuff like that. And to read those stories about the people she met and, the impact that they had on her life, and then letters that we received from people after she had passed away, just telling us about how much of an impact she had made on their lives, was pretty special. So that's what made me really want to document it. And I'd been doing podcasting for our organization since like 2012, like before podcasting was a big thing. And I really enjoyed that as well. So I talked to our producer when I was with the organization as we were making this change, and kind of had her walk me through how I could do this on my own. Because at that point I would just go in and do an interview. I had no idea, how it got to the internet after that. I walked out of the studio, and next thing I know, she sent me a link and we were good.
Right.
So she walked me through that process, and that's what I wanted to do, is to be able to document, through writing and through the podcast, just the stories of the people that we met along the way. And it's really been enjoyable.
Are you one of these people, and this might be a stupid question, but I'm one of these people that I enjoy driving a lot. If I get stressed out or upset, that for some reason, like, I resonated a lot with what you were just saying, that, I like to just either put on my favorite song and just go for a drive and take a different way to point A to point B. And I feel myself better after I've done it. And I don't know if it's just relaxing. I sort out my thoughts, I get my frustrations out, but I feel like you're one of those people too.
Absolutely.
Clears the head.
Yeah, and it's funny you said that, because probably a little over a year ago now, I did a blog specifically about that, titled The Drive. And it's funny because I do the majority of the driving, and I jokingly bust my wife's chops about not driving. And we've done like 38,000 miles so far on this journey, and she's driven about 70. So I jokingly bust her chops about, I do all the driving, but I truly, truly enjoy that more than anything.
Sure.
Just being there. And like you said, it is. And that's kind of what I felt on that solo trip to Texas and Louisiana, and then down to Orlando, is just, again, clearing of your head, listening to music and just enjoying that scenery. And like I said, it was one of the times that I wasn't on a strict schedule. When we traveled with our organization, when I was running the organization, we were always on, a strict schedule. I mean, we'd have 2 buses full of teenage baseball players, on our way to a tournament, 3, 6, 8 hours away. So there's always a schedule. It's like, okay, we got to be at the restaurant, the Old Country buffet at 8:30. We have, kids have to eat and have to be back on the bus by 9:30 so we can get to the complex by 11 in the morning, or whatever the case was. So there was always a real strict regiment of how we were traveling. And I think, that first time of really, taking my time and enjoying the journey is what, spoke to me about doing it. And that was one of the things I remember about, my mom's journey, is like, she would never take an interstate highway. I went with her between my junior and senior year of high school from Pennsylvania to Florida. And, that's a trip that I took quite a few times up until that point in my life, but it was always straight down I-95.
Yeah.
Where here, like, I have no idea what roads we were on, but there was no I-95 to be found, and normally that was a trip that growing up would take us, 18 to 20 hours to make that trip. And I think, my mom and I did it in like a week or 10 days because, again, we, we enjoyed the journey, and, we're on secondary roads and just places that you don't see from the interstate. So yeah, that drive is definitely one of the most relaxing things of this, without a doubt. So we try to avoid big cities, and, because there's still times where it can stress you out a little bit when you're driving through Chicago or something like that. But for the most part, it's pretty relaxing with the roads we're taking.
Yeah, it's something about, I guess, the freedom, and you're venturing a new era, a new city, and you're taking away the the way less traveled, so to speak. And just for me, that's I took a recent trip to Savannah, Georgia, and never been there in my life, and just it was it's about a 6-hour drive from where I'm at, and the whole time I was just amped and relaxed at the same time and excited, and it was just I took 95 for the last bit of it, but just because I was following my GPS, but it was one of those things that when I got to Savannah, though, I turned it off. It was just, driving down roads and just exploring new things. And I wasn't on a tight schedule either. And, plus, I was just so excited just to check out all the new, all the new scenery that I've never seen before in my life. And I just wonder if, somewhere down the road, if, and I don't know how to explain this, but just somewhere could be a past life, or it could be whatever you believe in. It's just something that it just resonated with me a lot. There's something like this felt right to me, and just, or maybe it's just where, people like exploring and just like, that's their thing. I know people who could care less about seeing new areas in the world, or seeing new sites and new places, or even traveling for that matter. But yeah, there's just something about it to me that it just speaks to me, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But also I've never driven an RV, but I could imagine driving one, and I don't know how big yours is, but going through Chicago or something like that would be a little scary.
Yeah. Ours is a 33-foot Class C, so it's a decent size vehicle for sure. So yeah, we like I said, we try to avoid big cities and stuff like that. There's times where we've done it. I mean, we were actually in Savannah as well on one of our first right after we started this, and really enjoyed that. They have a nice visitor center there where you could actually park the RV and spend the day there, which is pretty cool. Like, that's one of the things when we do go to visit is we're always kind of scouting out where can we park, because it's not always the easiest thing finding parking for a 33-foot RV. So the difference between Charleston, South Carolina, and Savannah, Georgia, was Savannah could accommodate RV parking. Charleston, there was no chance of parking an RV anywhere in that city.
But,
yeah.
But I mean, just kind of what you were talking about. I mean, I think did you say you have 3 books out?
3 books, yeah.
And just your life and just your adventures. Is this what's been your motivation behind writing all these?
Yeah. So they're all kind of memoirs to an extent. The first, again, I call it 2 books because it's the beauty of a diamond through the eyes of a coach, which originally was released in 2012, but then I added the 10 chapters and released it again last summer.
Nice.
So that really chronicles, my coaching experience and just what my approach was to coaching in general, that it wasn't always about winning. It was about, teaching kids life lessons through the game. So that's really what that talks about. And then like the 10 new chapters in the newer version of it really talked a lot about the decision to walk away from that and, do what we're doing now. And then the most recent book that was just released back in May, The Journey of My Mother's Son, Volume 1, is really just a collection of, what I call random thoughts from the road. So, whether it was an experience we had somewhere, someone we met, a certain destination, a walk on the beach, anything that might have inspired me to write about that is in that book. And it just kind of chronicles, again, those first 18 months of travel and what it's been like for us. And they really are, a collection of random thoughts. There's a little bit of repetition because obviously, you come across the same thing, a couple months away, but it really does talk about what the lifestyle is like. And that's volume one, because it'll kind of be a 4-part series, where the next one that I'm working on now is just called Many Little People, which will be, specifically about some of the people we've met on this journey. And then volume 3 will be Many Little Places, which again will chronicle the different places that we've been. I mean, this is an incredible country that we live in.
For sure.
It is so beautiful. And I mean, we're going on 2 years, man. We have just scratched the surface of what this country has to offer. And it seems like every place we go, we feel like, we're not there long enough, so it's like, we got to go back. We didn't get to see this, and this. So we've been to 39 states so far. Many of them, we've got a list of what we want to go back to. And then the ones we haven't seen, there's a big list there. So it's such an incredible country. I don't think we give it enough credit as to just the sheer beauty of what is in this country. And then the 4th volume of that series is just going to be like a picture book. So it'll just be a lot of pictures with a very little bit of writing, chronicling, again, the journey. So for people that don't want to read a couple hundred pages, that will probably be the book for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. But no, I want to go back on what you just touched on a little bit there, and that there's so many life lessons that is actually taught in sports that I want to say they go unnoticed, but I think maybe they only go unnoticed to people who never really played sports growing up or did anything like that. They look at it. I don't know how I'm trying to say it, but they just, they don't see the life lessons that are actually being taught within the sport. And that's one thing that's helped me. And, especially being at a young age, playing random sports growing up and through high school and stuff, that, you learn about friendship, you learn about losing, you learn about winning, you learn about, treating others with respect, sportsmanship. There's so many things that can come across there and you can take away with, and you can learn from the good times and definitely learn from the bad times, and they help you along your journey in life. And like I said, I think some people don't realize that and they just overlook them. But you actually either have to play the sport or be a specific fan to the sport to actually see the deeper meanings other than just winning or losing a ball game,
Yeah, no doubt. And that's one of the things that we've been fortunate to do since we've been traveling, is have the opportunity to reconnect with a lot of my former players, whether it be in Arizona or Texas or Georgia, wherever. And most times when we get together, I also do a podcast with them. And it's really cool to see how they're taking those life lessons that they learned, through playing the game, and are applying them. So it's like that opportunity of, as a coach, you're planting all these seeds, and many times you don't necessarily get to see the fruit of that labor. And that's been one of the things that's been so rewarding for, both me and my wife, because I mean, she made a ton of sacrifices for me to
Sure.
be able to coach the way I did. So I think for her, and for myself as well, it's just kind of driving home that impact that we had, on those kids. And again, I'm still calling them kids, even though, they're 35, almost 40 years old in some cases. But I tell them all the time, you're always going to be kids to me. I mean, we were able this summer to go to one of their weddings, and there are a couple other players there. And that's been so rewarding, again, just to see, how they've taken those life lessons and are applying them today, and everything you said, from teamwork and, knowing how to deal with failure, all that stuff applies in business. I mean, if you can't be part of a team, you won't be successful in business. I mean, that's just it. You can't argue that. So it's really cool to see how they're applying it today.
Yeah. I don't know how you feel about this, but as far as the like you said, that if you don't know how to play as a team, that's not going to help you in business. But and what I'm getting at, that you need to learn to have these humbling experiences as far as these losses and stuff, and just where kids now seem to get participation trophies, so to speak, and just for running out there and playing the game, it seems like to me it sets them up for failure down the road, just because if it's just handed to them and they didn't actually have to learn, whether how they lost the game or what they did to lose the game, and they just got something for just playing. And I guess, obviously I don't want kids just to face, or anybody to face, certain bad times in your life. But I guess what I'm saying is you need to have those bad times and those losses to actually learn from it and overcome these obstacles and challenges, and say, okay, this, give you like a kind of a made a motivational factor, and learn to handle the next time that situation arises, and just rather than just you get it. If you think everything's just going to be handed to you all the time, I feel like that's just setting yourself up for failure. Then when you learn that it doesn't in the job markets, so to speak, you just lead you down some bad roads.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we always had a term in our organization that we are either winning or learning. And I think I agree with you 100%, to just continue to teach these kids that, it is important just to show up. That is step one. But then you also got to put the work in. You also got to, understand the process, and you got to understand that you're not going to win all the time. And I coached some really good teams over my career, and I coached some really bad teams over my career as well. And it was always our goal that our team was just better, on, day 60 than we were on day one, or whatever the case was. And that was really what it was all about. So even as a bad team, as long as we were better than we were when we started, that was a success, even if we might have been 10 games below 500 or something like that. And I think that's the thing that, is interesting, again, that you brought that up, because I did a podcast with one of my former players that we saw in Maryland. And, he actually said to me that probably one of his, now as he looks back, one of his most rewarding seasons was a season he had with me where we were terrible, and we were just not a good, well, I shouldn't say we were terrible. We actually had some talent, but we didn't have chemistry. We had a lot of guys that didn't mesh, a lot of individuals, a lot of egos.
Oh yeah.
And he said, he learned so much, today in business from that one season than he did, the following year when they came back and won, 3 or 4 tournament championships, or, whatever the case is. So, again, if you're approaching it that there's always a lesson, you're going to get out of it what you put into it.
I agree.
So I think that's the big thing. There's always a lesson in failure. And it's just, what do you do to overcome those obstacles and keep moving forward and to, eventually be successful?
Yeah. And I agree with that, getting those egos out the door, and, and I think there's a time and place for ego. Sometimes I feel like when I get on this podcast, I start turning down people who have egos, but, it's like you said, though, if you have too many egos at a certain specific time, your team is not going to mesh. And it's not just only in for a sports, example either. But I mean, if you don't have a good workplace culture, too many egos, too many people just looking out for me, and not for the team, then, I don't see it ending very well. And I could be wrong. I mean, I'm probably not the man who should even be talking about it. But, for example, if you look at what Billy Bean did with the Oakland A's, when, all they did was just look at numbers and stats, and they didn't really care if you were a big name player or not. And I forgot what year this was. And then the Oakland A's had the longest winning streak of all time. And they can tell you, it can be proven. It's just a matter of finding that formula, like you were talking about, and finding what goes together and what doesn't go together. And it takes a lot of trial and error to do that. But yeah, it's not a science. It's just more of, let's sit down and see what, human beings can work together as get this entire goal we need to be finished.
And I think trusting the process as well, because early on when, using Billy Bean as example, that wasn't an overnight success story.
Oh, no.
It took some convincing of a lot of people who it was a change of thought process for sure. And it's funny, I saw sometime, some sort of meme on the internet where, it showed an iceberg of, that just said success at the top, but then,
I've seen.
The underneath is 3 times as big, that it talks about, failure and overcoming odds and all that sort of stuff. And it's so true. I mean, people just look at that success, but they don't necessarily understand what went into getting there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point that, they see, Aaron Judge, for example, out there playing ball and, yeah, he's big time. He's doing good. He's, an all-star or whatever, but they don't understand like what he went through to get to that certain point, and I think that goes underlooked. They just think that, people just come out the womb being Aaron Judge, which he did, but he also had to put in a lot of work that nobody sees. And, early mornings and late nights, in order to get to that level. And I think a lot of people don't really understand that there are levels to these games and stuff, and that, it takes not only just sitting on the couch and watching baseball, but getting out there and putting yourself through the dirty work and sacrificing those, Friday nights with your friends and those, early morning, I don't know, or sleeping in in the mornings, you're getting out there and got to get after it, especially if that's your goal and that's your motivation. And again, that's one of those things that can be applied through just life in general. I mean, like you said it best, you get in what you put out of it. You get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah. And our organization, we always, like the final tournament of our season, we'd always take a longer trip. And during, part of that trip was to always get our kids onto a college campus and have the college baseball coach talk to him and kind of talk to him about, what it takes to play at that next level. And 2 of the places that we'd gone to is we went to Coastal Carolina in Myrtle Beach.
Yep.
And we went to UNLV when we took a trip out to Las Vegas for a tournament. And, the coach at Coastal Carolina, like the first thing he said to these guys, like, look, a lot of guys, like they think like they're coming down here and, they're going to be looking at girls in bikinis on the beach. He goes, our guys don't go to the beach. He goes, you walk through our clubhouse and ask any one of those guys the last time they were at the beach. And it's probably when they go home on summer break, and even that's few and far between. And then same thing at UNLV. The guy said, our players don't go to the Strip. They're not going to the Strip because, maybe some freshmen, when they come here, they think that's the way the life's going to be at UNLV. But they end up cutting themselves, so like we know the guys that are going to the Strip, and it's like we purposely schedule our workouts at 5 a.m. because you're not going to the Strip.
Exactly.
5 a.m.
Yeah.
So he says we have a way of they have a way of cutting themselves if they think they're here to go to the Strip and not play baseball. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of sacrifice that goes into, making it to that, elite level of performance.
Did you always see yourself as wanting to be a coach, or did you knew you were going to be a coach?
No, I kind of fell into it. We started our organization. I had actually started our organization, and when we first started it, it was, really an adult baseball organization.
Yeah.
And it was just, I'd gone to a trade school, so I didn't play in college, but I wanted to continue playing. So I'd started this organization. So because I started it, I kind of got thrown into coaching. So like my first year of coaching, I'm coaching guys that I graduated high school with. I'm coaching guys that graduated a couple of years ahead of me. And, that was never, my plan to coach. I just started the organization, quite frankly, because I wanted to play more. And all of a sudden, here I am because I started it, like, hey, you're the coach. But I did take it very seriously, right from the beginning. And once I started coaching the kids, and I've coached, from every age, from 10 and under on up to college summer league teams. Mm-hmm. And, once I started those younger kids, when I really, really took it to a new level and, started going to coaching clinics and reading books about coaching and, understanding that I was teaching them more than just the X's and O's, that, I was making a big impact on their life. So no, I definitely didn't envision myself as a coach when I was younger or anything like that. It just kind of fell into it, and then I embraced it.
Yeah, like I said, when I was playing, sports at that age, there's a couple coaches I still have that made a huge impact on my life just from teaching me something, taking away something from the game or a life lesson that I still embark on this day, and it's a great feeling to have. And I wish everybody could have that feeling, because to have somebody you don't really plan on, you just think it's just sports at the time, but it's actually a deeper meaning into it. And it's something that probably takes you, or for me, it took me a while to understand it and actually have to sit down and reflect on it. But then, and like having conversations like this, and we're watching a movie where that happens into a part of the story. It's like, oh man, that's a great feeling to have, and I wish most people could experience that. And maybe they do in some form or the other, but it's just something more. I want to say majestic when it's like that in part of the sports. Maybe just because that just resonates with people like you and I, and it's just part of our how we have fun in life and how we learn in life, and what we are just drawn to. And apparently, it has always been baseball for you.
Yeah, I mean, I played a lot of other sports growing up too, but baseball was that thing that just really resonated with me for some reason. I was actually probably a better football player, just pure talent wise, but I loved baseball. I loved everything about it, just because, in my opinion, baseball and softball are, the two sports that put even more emphasis on teamwork than any other sport. Because, and I use this example in my first book, if the game's on the line, in other sports, you're going to draw up a play to get the ball into your best playmaker's hands.
Sure.
So I mean, the Bulls weren't drawing up plays to get the ball out of Michael Jordan's hands, when the game's on the line.
Of course.
Nobody was putting in, a substitute quarterback for Joe Montana or somebody like that when the game was on the line. So you had some, ways to making sure you had the best pieces in place. But in baseball, if the game's on the line, you're down a run with a runner on second base, and your number 8 or 9 hitter is coming to the plate. Like, you can't just, call timeout and say, hey, look, we're going to put our number 4 hitter in this spot because it gives us the best chance to win. So right. You're really depending on, potentially your weakest link to make or break the team in that moment. You can have the best pitcher in the world, but if he can't rely on his catcher to catch a breaking ball in the dirt, doesn't matter. I'm a big Boston Red Sox fan, and when the Red Sox got rid of Doug Mirabelli, they had a major problem in the fact they didn't have anybody who could catch a knuckleball from Tim Wakefield. They literally made a trade midway through the next season. I don't even think it was midway through the next season, to get Mirabelli back. And I remember a game where Mirabelli was actually being escorted by police from Logan International Airport to Fenway to get there in time for Wakefield's start, because it was disaster. I mean, they'd put, Jason Varitek, who was one of the best catchers in the game at the time, he's out there trying to catch Wakefield, and he looks like a little league catcher because, he's just running back to the backstop, getting, chasing after knuckleballs all day long, So that's where I think baseball and softball come in so big in the whole team aspect for sure. And I want to circle back to the one thing you said about that impact that coaches have on you. Something that really drove home to me is it's probably back in like 2008 or so. I had to go to San Antonio, Texas to speak at the National Alliance of Youth Sports Convention. And part of that was also being able to go see all the other speakers and, just participate in the event itself. And the keynote speaker for that event was Emmitt Smith.
Oh, wow.
And I remember him opening up his speech and talking about the coach that had the greatest impact on his life. And it wasn't Galen Hall, and it wasn't Jimmy Johnson. It was his very first Pop Warner football coach. I can't remember the guy's name anymore. I wish I would have wrote it down and remembered it. But it was his very first Pop Warner football coach is who he said had the greatest impact on his life. So again, here's a guy who was a Hall of Famer, the NFL's leading rusher, and the guy that he brings up in this keynote speech in front of probably 700 people was his first coach that he ever played for. And that was like, if anybody in that room at that point didn't understand how important they were as a youth coach, they completely had missed the boat. So that really drove home for me the importance of what I was doing as a coach at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot. Just like you said, for somebody, arguably one of the best running backs who ever played the game, just to say something like that, I mean, it hits home. I mean, kids at that age their minds are a sponge, and hopefully that make it a huge impact on them. And it's one of the things it seems like I overlooked as like I said, I do remember like my first coaches and stuff, but I never took it like the way I feel like I should have taken it, as far as like, this is a great memorable experience I'm having, and I should take, learn every little bit that I can and hold on to every moment that I can, just to, because it's going to be over in a heartbeat. And it is now, like I'm 36 years old, and this was just, I think I started playing, fourth, fifth grade basketball. And that's the coach I'm talking about. And, that went all the way up through 7th, 8th grade. And I was like, man, and just, we had a lot of good times, and still some of my best friends I've ever made, was all part of that squad. And it was, we still talk somewhat here and there, but we're not as close as we used to be. But it was one of those early moment memories that, stick out to me a lot. And hopefully I'll remember it till I'm on my deathbed, I guess. But yeah, just, it's like I've already said, I hope other people have that type of memories, whether it not be a coach, but at least somebody who can make an impact in their life in some form or another in a positive way. And through sports, it seems like to be one of the best ways to get it too. So,
yeah, and I think a lot of times it's just human nature to not necessarily appreciate that moment when you're in it, but at least you're able to now, look back and connect the dots and understand how important it was. I mean, that's one thing that, through us traveling, I think Sandy and I have both, embraced the moment a lot more than we ever had previously. We just were a lot more present, both with ourselves and when we're with our family. I mean, obviously the toughest part of doing this was leaving our family, back in Pennsylvania, but yet we find ourselves so much more present and intentional when we are with them now than what we ever were before. Because I think we just, let's face it, we just take life for granted. Everybody thinks we have tomorrow and next week and next year and 10 years from now. But the fact of the matter is, the only thing that's actually guaranteed for us is this moment that we're in right now.
Sure. Yeah. And John Welborn, he played for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he has his own podcast called Power Athlete. And he actually made a great point, very similar to what you're saying, to that, that when he's looking back on his life and his deathbed, that he doesn't want to be sit there thinking like, oh, damn, I wish I would have got that new iPhone, or, I wish I would have got that brand new TV or whatever. It's like these types of experiences in life, and traveling and seeing new places, and, learning to love and find friendship, and, meet cool new people along your life journeys, that's what's going to hit home the most for something like that. And like, when he said that, I think he said it during a podcast or something I was listening to, and I was like, man, and this was, I forgot when he said this, probably years ago, I don't know, but I was like, man, that hit home again so much to me. And it was like, man, I hope, I have been looking at life like that. And if I haven't, there's like one of these 180 things, I was like, man, I got to start, getting out there. And like I said, when I had that opportunity to go to Savannah, it was for a CrossFit thing. And I was like, never been there. And I was like, I don't care. I mean, if it costs me money, I don't care. It's like a 6-hour drop. Okay. No big deal. Gas is a little high right now, but whatever. I mean, when I don't want to be sitting there wishing that I wish I would have took that trip and not got to experience something, see something new, and, just have a cool new story and add something to my life chapters, or whatever you want to say. And that's what it seems like when I'm talking with people like yourself and other people who've went down these paths in life. That's kind of what seems to be a common theme, is that, you set out, you take a journey, whether it be by yourself or with whoever, and you learn along the way, and you find out a little bit about yourself, and, you learn what you like and learn what you didn't like. And, and you take the pearls and gems and make something of it, man. And you just, and if it doesn't work out, then cool. You got at least a story to tell. And something to go off of it. Yeah. And so, yeah, I kind of ran a little bit on that, but but I love stuff like that, man. And I wish I would have had this type of mindset when I was younger and growing up, especially like, in high school and college, and just not thinking about me at the time and actually thinking about, life around me, what's going on, and just not worrying about myself and living in that moment, like taking it all in, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I think it's kind of human nature. And unfortunately, I think we start to change, sadly, as we experience loss,
Sure.
And unfortunately you start to experience more loss the older you get, and you're kind of reflecting on your own mortality and that sort of thing. And, again, I don't think a lot of people at a young age understand it unless they lose someone dear to them at a very young age, as well. So, but by the same token, I think that's just all part of us growing as human beings, and again, being able to look back and say, man, I wish, but, at the end of the day, I was on another podcast a couple weeks ago, and at the end, the host had asked me if, there was anything that I would change about, my journey so far. And I was like, honestly, I wouldn't, because, the good things that have happened to me and the bad things that have happened to me are all part of what made me who I am today.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sit back and say, I wish I did this way. I've made mistakes, probably more than the average guy. But again, those were all, lessons for me as well, and I think that's when you're not learning over those mistakes and those failures, I think that's when you stop growing as a person.
That's a perfect way to say it, man. And yeah, if you're not learning from what you've done in life, I mean, nobody lives a perfect life, and everybody has problems, and it's kind of what you said. It just matters how you handle those problems and what you do with it. And if you have a fixed mindset and that's how you want to live your life and just think things the way they are because that's the way they are, then if you're happy, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, that's my biggest thing too, is like, when I've made mistakes, and I'm going to make mistakes, like you said, it's humans, I've learned from them, and you learn to grow from it, and you learn to do something better with it. And yeah, it's wild to me that some people stay in a certain mindset and they don't want to try something new or take a chance on something. And, and everyone's afraid of failing, I mean, it's part of, like you're saying, it's human nature. It is, I don't like to fail, and I always want to win, of course. And I don't want to look like an idiot or a fool out there doing something, but it's part of, and it's part of the process, like you were talking about, trusting the process. And that's, if you have a goal in life and if you want to get to that goal in some form or fashion of another, then there's going to be bumps and bridges on the way. It's just like what you said with the iceberg about the thing of, see, everyone sees like the cool stuff at the top, but below it, what were you actually going through to get there? And when you get there, yeah, it's a great feeling, and it's kind of a sense of very satisfying, and learning that you can do stuff and make the world better than when you left it, and just a whole new sense of, I don't know what you want to call it, freedom or whatever, but it's amazing feeling, and that's something I'm still working on myself. And I know it's not going to happen overnight, but if I keep following smart decisions and making the best of things, and not trying to just stay set in my ways, but learning to grow and take a chance on something, then boom, hopefully a little magic will happen for you.
That's right. So that's right, no doubt about that.
But how is it, I want to talk to you about your dog. I know you got a golden retriever. I mean, how is it traveling with the dogs and everything? Is that just makes it more fun?
He loves it. He loves it as much as my wife and I do. We walk and we hike every opportunity that we get. We've been on some incredible trails with each other since we've started this, and we started doing a lot of walking even before we left, and a lot of hiking out in nature. But now, man, the RV life is a dog's best life for sure. I mean, he gets out the door and there's just new smells, and if we're walking around a campground, he thinks that everybody else in the world has been placed here for the sole purpose of petting him. He's not a fan of other dogs, so we always got to watch that. If we see another dog, we got to start to make a detour to keep him away. But he loves people, man. And it's funny, people come up, they're like, "Oh, can I pet your dog? And is he friendly?" I'm like, "Yeah, as long as you're not another dog, you're good to go."
Oh, yeah, I love it, man. And, I've never had a golden retriever, but I've always heard they're some of the best dogs that you can have. And just exactly what you said, they think, everybody's their best friend and they're ready to party no matter what. Especially, just a dog getting out there and getting to travel and look at, got choked up there, getting to look at the world and whole new area each time and check it out. Yeah, they go on a little venture themselves. It's got to be a wild feeling for them. So
we weren't sure how he would travel at first because he wasn't great just traveling in a car or a truck, before we started the RV life. So we weren't really sure, how is he going to adapt to, to doing this. And, we tried a couple things early on, thinking maybe if my wife sat in the back on the couch, that maybe he would just hop up there with her and relax and, think that, hey, it's just our house is moving down the road now. But that drove him crazy. He'd go, up to me in the driver's seat, back to her. He's back and forth the whole time. And then finally, one time she just got in the front seat and she's like, "Look, he's going to have to figure it out. He's going to have to figure it out." And we started down the road and he came down, sat right in between us and was like, "This is the way it is. This is perfect. I got my one human on my left, my other human on the right, and we're on the move. This is the best life we can have." And that's pretty much where he'll spend 90% of the time that we're driving, he is right in between the two of us. And I don't know how he does it because he's not a small dog, but he'll lay down in between the two seats, kind of curl up in a ball if he gets tired. Every once in a great while, he'll go back and lay on the couch. Like if it's a long travel day and we're driving for 4 or 5 hours, it might be like, "Hey, you guys got this under control.
Go take a nap.
Don't forget my snack later on. We're good." But he absolutely loves it. And he really, he adds to the whole experience. I mean, one of my, I actually do a blog that's written as though it's being written by him from his perspective. And it's really a lot of fun for me to write that. And I'm actually working on a children's book that's being written from his perspective as well. So it's a little bit different style of writing for me. It lets me dig into my creativity differently than normal. But it's really enjoyable doing those for sure.
Do you have a goal set out in mind for traveling? I mean, is it to hit all the 50 states or, I had it on my bucket list to actually try to visit every major stadium that I can, until the day I die. I mean, is that what one of y'all's things is, or y'all just kind of just seeing where life takes you?
Yeah, it's we definitely want to get to all the states. I mean, obviously can't get an RV to Hawaii. So, and I hate to fly. So I don't know that we'll ever get to Hawaii. We definitely want to get up into Alaska, through Canada and stuff. But so, the 49 that we can drive to are definitely on the list, but not really in any particular order.
Gotcha.
We're hoping maybe in 2 years we'll be able to get up to Alaska just because that's a summer where we don't have a grandkid graduating. So we had one graduate this year. We have one graduate. Well, we had two graduating this year. We got one graduating next year. And then we have a year off before the next one graduates. So we're thinking that 2024 will be the year that we can, get up there. Because obviously, I want to get up there during June where, you got like 22 hours of daylight. Like that just like, I can't even fathom what that's like to be, walking around at 11 o'clock at night and it's still daylight out. Like that's just one of the things that for whatever reason just intrigues me as to how that even works, so definitely, again, that's the plan. But, the great thing about this is that, we can always be fluid in our plans. So we really don't, look out too far in advance as to, what's on the schedule. So we can always make adjustments and be fluid if we have to.
Yeah, that's always nice. It's just to go at your own pace and be like you said, just be fluid with it, And you got kind of a goal in mind, but you don't have to do it from detail from point A to point B in order for it to work. So, but yeah, like I said, when somebody asked me to make a bucket list one time, that was one of my things, was try to visit, every major stadium that I could. It was also like, oh, I'm also, seeing new cities at the same time. And I was like, man, that would be so cool just to actually go sit and, enjoy the game, whether it be baseball, basketball, football, and just check out the history there. And, for example, for work, I went to a conference in Boston, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It was before COVID, but we got up there and I forgot when we went, but Fenway was not even open then, but they let us go walk around it and stuff. And I was like, all right, good enough for me. But then we got to go over to see where the Celtics play now, but we couldn't go inside. But it's just walking around. I was like, man, I wish I could go inside. But it was still cool, man, just to actually walk through the city and check out everything at the same time, and just seeing the history and seeing what little things they have on the outside, and just where it was, and say I've been there. That was that meant a lot to me for some reason. Like, I really enjoyed stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely just part of the whole experience is seeing those things that you wouldn't necessarily see otherwise. And I mean, people ask us all the time, like, what's been your favorite spot so far?
Yeah.
And we just can't name it. We can't name it. We'll try to say, well, I'll give you the top 5, and we'll list 5, and they're like, oh, but this place was really cool too, so maybe that should be in the top 5. I mean, and that's what I mean from what I said earlier, that this country has so much beauty to offer. And I just think that the American way that we've come accustomed to is to go to college and get a job and buy a house and stay in one spot your whole life. I'm just not sure we have it right. I think the Native Americans might have had a better grip on that by just constantly being nomads and being on the move all the time. It's just, like I said, it's so fulfilling, seeing all the different things that we've seen so far.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've said on here countless times too, that I kind of have a problem with. That that was kind of what was ingrained on me, was to, after high school, go to college, get a job, and just kind of work your 30 years until you retire and go drink margaritas on a beach or whatever. And like, I'm slowly, I don't know if it was COVID or where I got the, where life came to a halt, and I actually got to stop and reflect on myself a little bit, and reflect on where my life has been, and if it's going the way I wanted it to. And it was kind of one of those things that, am I happy? I mean, is this where I saw myself, and when I was, 10 years ago, did I plan on still being in the same spot, and then, it's like, man, and then, I hit 36 this year, and it's like, well, how much have I really done, as far as traveling and seeing, what's out there, rather than just, I'm right here in Virginia. So seeing what else is out there other than just Virginia. So when I've gotten these opportunities to be able to go somewhere, I was like, I got to jump on it. For example, when was it? Last month, I went to Gettysburg up your way, and, I'm not a history buff or anything, but I said, well, I got an opportunity. Let's go check it out and see at least what it's about. And, it was cool. I liked it, but it, like, I think if I was more of a history buff, I would have got more out of it. But it was one of those things that, even so, that I'm glad I went and I got to see it for myself and walk through the museum and see some of the battlefields. And, I got my own review of it. And yeah, and I'm glad I do it. So yeah, it's one of these things I got to look for more. When I see or feel these opportunities coming up, I want to snatch them and get after it,
Yeah. And I highly recommend that. And, and I think that's important that, again, even though you weren't, a big history buff, that you still decided you wanted to, go and experience it as well, because you can still learn from that. And, we've been, like I said, we were up at Woodstock, and early on in our journey. And that was so cool. Just going to the Woodstock Museum and understanding how the festival took place, and
Exactly.
all the moving parts of it and stuff like that. And, so many things like that we, have been able to experience. I mean, when we were in Memphis, and again, just, I'm a big, in addition to sports, I was always, just a big, connoisseur of music and all kinds of music. So Memphis was super cool. And, like, we went to Graceland, and I tell people this, like, I was never like a huge Elvis Presley fan at all.
Sure.
But like, we went to Graceland, and I just gained such a huge amount of respect for him as an artist after we went to Graceland. They had this exhibit there called Icons of Rock and Roll. And it was just an exhibit of, there were probably close to 100 different artists in this exhibit that talked about how much Elvis influenced their own musical career. And I'm talking like everywhere from, Toby Keith and Blake Shelton to Bruce Springsteen and Sheryl Crow to like Kiss, who would ever think that, the band Kiss was influenced by Elvis Presley, and Kid Rock and stuff like that. So it was really, I just gained a huge amount of respect that, he really did earn the title King of Rock and Roll. But my old self may have said, I'm not going to Graceland because I'm not a big Elvis guy. I'm just not going to do it. But I'm so happy that we did. And my wife the same way. She wasn't a big Elvis fan, but it was just so cool to go and do that experience.
Yeah. Well, Dan, I think we take it home on that right there.
Yeah.
If people want to find the books, they want to find your podcast, if you want to plug anything, feel free to do it right there.
Yeah. Just go to my website, which is journeymymotherson.com or danclouser.com. They both go to the exact same landing page, and everything that, that you need to find out about me is there. My blogs are there, links to buy my books, whether it's an autographed copy directly from me, can be ordered there, or it'll take you to Amazon to order a unsigned copy as well. Anybody looking to reach out to me for speaking engagements or consulting services or anything like that, all that information is on the website. So that really will give you all the information you need to know about me. From there, books, blogs, everything you need to know is right there. And of course, Yuke's blogs as well from the dog. You can spend some time reading his blogs as well. He would enjoy that.
Wait, is that his name, Yuke?
Yeah, he's named after Kevin Euclid.
I was getting ready to well, I love it. Okay. Yeah, I remember you saying a Red Sox fan when you said Yuke, I was like, wait, let me put that together. Okay, cool. Cool, man. Dan, this was great, man. I appreciate you being here.
Appreciate the time for sure. It was a lot of fun.
All right, everybody, we're out of here. Good night.